Hey, what's going on? My name is Kenta from American Hakko, and for today's Eye on Hakko webinar episode, I'll be talking about solder pots. Speaking of which, let me ask y'all a question. How long does it take for your solder pot to melt 2 pounds of solder? Does it take 30 minutes, 40 minutes, maybe even 50 minutes? Well, what if I told you that there was a way to cut that time in half? Be interesting? Well, let me show you. I'll tell you more about it in today's episode of Eye on Hakko. Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Eye on Hakko. Again, my name is Kenta, and for today's episode, I'll be talking about the FX-305. It's our new digital solder pot from Hakko. All right, solder pots. There's all sorts of solder pots out there. This one's a digital solder pot. What do people use solder pots for? People use them mainly in our field, which is the electronics manufacturing industry. People use them to tin wires and cables, tin component leads. Some people may use them to solder or desolder multi-pin connectors from PCBs, or some people may just simply use them to remove coating from wires. There's just a whole bunch of different ways that people can use solder pots. This solder pot, the FX-305, it's a new solder pot, but the way you use them is no different. What's different about the FX-305 is that it heats up super fast, but at the same time, right? And plus it has a whole bunch of features and benefits, bells and whistles that I think that are really helpful for anyone using solder pots in the manufacturing industry. So you want to pay attention, and we'll dive straight into the FX-305 today. So that's what I have in front of me here. Before I turn on the station and show you just how quickly these things work, let me just go over quickly the basic specs on the FX-305. This is our new digital solder pot, but the previous version of our digital solder pot was called the FX-301B. This one, that 301B is now discontinued, and it has been replaced with this one, the FX-305. The FX-305 is now 575 watts of power, and the temperature range goes from 50 to 530 degrees Celsius maximum. Just for comparison, the wattage on our previous FX-301B was just about 300 watts. That's 290, so just about 300 watts. So in comparison, the 305 is almost twice as powerful as our previous model FX-301B. Again, 575 watts of power on the FX-305. The temperature range is from 50 degrees Celsius all the way up to 530 degrees Celsius. Now, I'll just say that it does depend on the crucible size that you are using. So we now have 3 different crucible sizes that are available for the FX-305. One is the 50 by 50. The standard one is a 75 by 70, excuse me. And the other one is the 100 by 100 millimeter crucible size. Now, as you can see, the temperature is listed down below. The maximum temperature differs by what crucible size you use. So on a 50 by 50 millimeter, the maximum temp, like I said, goes up to 530 degrees Celsius. That's 909 degrees in Fahrenheit. And on the standard 75 by 75, the max temp is 500 degrees Celsius, which is about 940 degrees Fahrenheit. And on the 100 by 100, the maximum temperature you can use is 450, which is about 840 degrees in Fahrenheit. So remember, 3 different crucible sizes. Temperature range goes from 50 all the way up to 530, but it does depend on the crucible size that you use, all right? So that is just part of the improvement that we made on the FX-305. Additional crucible sizes, larger range of temperature setting that you're now capable of setting on the solder pots, and also the increase in wattage, the 575 watts of power, delivering power to the heaters, because the heaters inside of the pot are now improved as well. I'll show you guys about that in a minute here, but now that I got some of the specs out of the way, I'm gonna go ahead and turn on the station, okay? By the way, if you want to read up on much more of our features and benefits, spec information, if you're looking for technical documents, all that good stuff. You can read more about it. Visit www.HakkoUSA.com. Type in FX-305 on the search box. It'll take you to the product page, and there you can find all the features and benefits, spec information, technical documents, all that good stuff on the product page. All right, so getting back to today's webinar, let me turn on and power up this baby. So I'm gonna turn it on. All right, so now you have the set temperature down below. 700 is flashing. That's actually the heater sensor temperature. It's trying to get up to temperature. That's the preset number 3. I'll explain all that, what all those mean on the station and on this control software later on. But I'm gonna turn on station, and while the crucible is warming up, I'm actually gonna grab a different set of FX-305 that I have here. This one's a clean one. It's a demo one that I have here, and I'm going to use this to show you, just so that everyone understands how our solder pots work. All right, because our solder pots, the crucibles are replaceable, and so are the heaters. So let me tell you a little bit about it. All right, by the way, let me turn on my stopwatch so I know how long it'll take for the solder to melt. So here is our FX-305. Again, I told you that the crucibles are replaceable. So when you want to remove the crucibles, all you have to do is, there are 2 hex screws on either side, on both sides of the solder pot, one on the right, one on the left. You want to take the hex wrench that comes with the solder pot and just rotate those screws counterclockwise and counterclockwise on this side. Loosen up the heaters that are holding the crucible in place, and you'll be able to remove the actual pot or the crucible. All right, now after you replace them, put them back in, and then in order to move the heaters back into position where they're making contact with the walls of the crucible, all you have to do is go back to these hex screws, turn them clockwise. Oh, sorry, clockwise, yeah, clockwise this way, and here clockwise this way. That'll move the heaters enough to make contact with the walls of the crucible, all right? But before I put this away, I want to show you the inside of our solder pot, or the FX-305. You can sort of see, here's a heater here, and here's a heater on the right side. Again, it's important to know there are 2 heaters, one on the right, one on the left, okay? And that's what's actually making contact with the pot or the crucible, okay? In order to open up and lift and open up the chassis, all you have to do, there's 2 screws here. I already have them removed for the demo purposes, but just know you just have to remove those 2 screws. Once you have those removed, take out the pot like I showed you, and ta-da, you can open up the case or the chassis for the FX-305. And then here you can see better. There you go. This is the heater on the, there you go, on the right hand side. And here is the heater on the left hand side. Whenever you need to replace the heaters, you simply connect 2 points, one there, pull out the heater, put the heater back in place and make the connection, and there you go. Simple process if you need to ever replace your heaters on the FX-305. Right, you made that process a lot easier. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you is this, we call this the heat insulation plate down here below. And if you look on the insulation plate, they're actually in the center, right there. That right there is a leak detection sensor. Now that heat insulation plate, for one, if in any case you get a hole on your crucible and liquefied solder leaks out, that insulation plate or cover will help hold the solder in its place, and it won't leak out to the rest of the solder pot, damaging the electrical board or any other wiring or components on this side of the solder pot, right? So that's what the heat insulation plate is there for. Now, the other thing is when the solder does leak out, once it touches that leak detection sensor, it'll shut down the solder station at that point, And on the display, you actually get a display that reads L-E. That means leak error. And also once that leak error shows, the solder pot will start beeping or buzzing. It's letting you know that, hey, solder is leaking inside your pot, so you might want to fix it. So those are some of the safety mechanisms that we have built into our new FX-305. So one, I wanted to show you those safety mechanisms. Two, I wanted to show you how the heaters work and how they make contact with the sidewalls of our crucibles. And that is a good thing to know, because when you are first heating up the solder pot, right, here's different size crucibles, by the way. That's the 50 and this is the 100, right? So when you're first heating up the crucibles, obviously the crucibles are empty. You heat it up, set your temperature, start heating the crucible up. You want to make sure you have some heat resistant gloves, or hold the bar solder with some channel locks or something so that you're not burning yourself, and be careful. But a trick you can know when melting the bar solder is that we now know that the heaters are making contact with the side walls, the left hand side and the right hand side. So a trick to use when melting the bar solder is to simply start melting the bar solder by touching it on the right side wall and on the left side wall. That'll help melt the bar solder faster than trying to melt it on the front or the back wall, or just simply using the bottom of the crucible to melt the bar solder. And why is that? That's because, why? Because our heaters are making contact with the right hand side and the left hand side of our crucible. So that's a little advice or trick I wanted to share with everyone when you're first getting started off, first melting bar solder into your crucibles, okay? All right, so now that I was able to tell you a little bit about how our solder pots are constructed, some of the safety mechanisms that we have built into our solder pot. Let me see, it's been, it's about 6 minutes now. Let me see how the solder inside of my pot is doing. So at the 6-minute mark on my stopwatch, solder is molten up at the top. So that's a good sign. 6 minutes, huh? That's pretty good. But if you take a look at the display, then the display shows that my set temperature here, that's my set temperature. And again, this is the number up top. That's the actual heater sensor temperature. So set temperature is 700, but heater temperature is still trying to get up to 700. You can see that it's slowly creeping up to temp. Degrees Fahrenheit, I'm using Fahrenheit for my unit of temperature. And that P3, that's my actual preset number. I'm using preset number 3 set to 700 for my current settings, okay? So let me take this time to talk about just basic operation of the FX-305 of our solder pot. To turn it on, simply just turn the power switch on, right? That'll get the solder pot up and running. And there you go. That beep lets me know that the heaters have reached the set temperature. Okay, so that's good. So the other operation I want everyone to understand and to get to know is how to stop the solder pot. On our previous model, digital solder pots, or even our analog solder pots, and a lot of the solder pots out there in general, the way you stop the solder pot is to simply turn the power off. Right? That was the only way to turn the solder pot off. Now, what we have put into our new FX-305 is the ability to stop the solder pot, but still see how hot the pot is at the same time. So what am I talking about? All right, there. Pot 700, set temperature 700, pot is at 700, right? And say I'm done tinning wires or cables or removing some connectors or whatever the case may be, whatever you're working on. Say you're done with that process and I want to stop it. I simply hit the stop button you'll see that the stop, there's a flashing stop that shows up. And then you want to use this enter button to confirm that you want to stop it. And then there you go. I've just stopped sending power to the heaters. So I stopped the heaters. However, I still have that display showing me that the pot is still hot. We put that in because if we just turn the power off, the display goes completely blank. And maybe for people that are working around the solder pot, it was difficult for people working around solder pot to know just how hot the solder pot currently is. So to know the current status of the solder pot, we put in that extra feature on our new FX-305 where you're able to stop the heater but still see that it is still at 635, 33. It's still hot basically, right? So that's another safety feature that we have added in to our new digital solder pot, the FX-305. So, and to get it back up into operation, from here, you just simply hit the stop button one more time, and then there you go. The heaters are now back up and running. It's flat 700 is flashing because it's trying to reach its set temperature, okay? So that's how you start it, that's how you stop it. Another important operation to know is how to change temperature. How do you change temperature? Well, there's a couple different ways you can do it. One is there's a temp button right there. That also acts as an enter button, by the way, but this is one way you can change the temperature. You press that, you get that temperature icon to the left, right? And then the set temperature down below, you see that the 7 is flashing. Here, from here on out, you can use combination of the up, down, and enter button to make your selection, right? So say I want to change my temperature from 700 to 750, for example. I'm already at the 7, so I hit enter to move on. I want to go from 0 to 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then I hit enter. And then for the last digit, I'm already at the one that I want, so I hit enter again. And then boom. That's one way you can change your temperature. I just changed it from 700 to 750, right? That's one way you can change your set temperature. The other way you can change your set temperature, now this is the way I like to use, I prefer, because it's a lot easier for me, it's a lot faster for me. There's less buttons to press if I use this way, and that's using the preset feature. You can program up to 5 different presets in the FX-305, and in order to change the temperature, it's real easy. So going back to the display, there's this preset button. So if I press that, guess what? The P3 shows up, and if I scroll through, there's 2, there's 1, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There's a total of, again, like I told you, 5 different presets that you can program into the station. So you go to the one that I want. I'm gonna go back to preset 3 at 700, and then from here I just hit enter, and then there you go. Right? So using the preset, if I want to go to 800, I go to P4, hit enter. It's real easy. Right? Real easy, real fast to change your set temperature when you're using the preset feature on our stations, okay? So we put that in there for a reason. I like to use it, it's a lot easier for me, and I like to make use of it. So that was the basic operation, how to start it, how to stop it, how to make use of the preset feature. There's also the offset feature on the front face of the station. That's the same offset feature you'll find on many of our Hakko stations, where you're able to measure and verify your tip temperatures, or your, in this case, starter pot temperatures. And if there's a difference between the measure and the actual and the set temperature, then you can offset it and adjust it a little bit, right? That feature is also present in the FX-305. So let's see. Let me see, while it's cooling down, I was playing around with the set temperature going up and down, going up and down. So it looks like my set temperature is now a little bit higher than my set temperature. So let me take this time and let's talk about a little bit about some accessories that we have available for the FX-305. We have a few accessories available for 305, a couple of them being important ones. It is the temperature probe you can use to measure the pot temperature, and the FG100B, like the one I have here, a tip thermometer. You can connect the probe to the FG100B and measure the tip thermometer. We also have a probe mounting fixture that I'll show you. This fixture that we have here. I can show you how to use this here in a minute. I'll set that aside for now, but I'll show you that in a little bit, all right? We also have these mounting brackets available. These mounting brackets you actually install to the bottom of the station, and then you mount the station to your workbench. That way there's no accidental tipping over of the solder pot. It's just another safety mechanism that's now available for the FX-305. Speaking of safety, there's this pot cover right here. That pot cover, it comes with the station. Whenever you're using the solder pot, make sure whenever you're heating up the solder pot, make sure you put that cover down and then turn the station on. That way it'll allow or prevent any kind of accidental splatter of the solder when you're first heating it up. And also it'll prevent any kind of foreign material or debris from falling into the pot. You never want that to happen for contamination purposes. You don't want that to happen, so make sure you use the cover. And also the cover can also act to prevent anyone from accidentally touching the solder and the pot itself. So you want to make sure the cover is down when you're heating it up. Lift it up when you need to work on your, tinning your wires and cables, or connectors, whatever the case may be. But when you're done, place it down for safety purposes. That's also another safety mechanism that we have built into this station. That beep again was telling me that the heaters have cooled down to the set temperature level. So using my temperature probe and thermometer, let's just check to see how the temperature is inside of the solder pot. Oh, there we go. So the probe, you want to try to get the probe in the middle of the pot, whatever size you're using, same deal. Set temperature set to 700. Measure temperature, what, 703, 704? That's a great measurement, right? So from here, if the temperature is off, you can actually offset it by wirelessly offset it if you choose to, but in my case, the temperature is already set, so I'm good to go there. That was the probe accessory and the thermometer accessory. Now, I keep telling you guys that our FX-305, it heats up really fast. You guys saw, earlier in melting this 50 by 50 solder pot, that holds about, just about 2 pounds of solder, by the way. So in order for the 305 to melt 2 pounds of solder, it's lead-free solder. It's a SN995. I had it set to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. Under those conditions, it took, about 10 minutes, if that, to melt that 2 pounds of solder. So it's really fast. But, thing with solder pots is you don't want to reflow it too quickly, right? But in our case, we have pre-programmed temperature profiles within the station. Depending on the different solder alloy types that you may be using, we have different programs, heating profiles programmed into our solder pot station so that it'll ramp up quickly but safe at the same time, right? So you can go into the station in the system parameters and actually select what solder alloy it is that you're using. By default setting, it's set to a 75 by 75 crucible, and the solder alloy is tin, silver, copper, right? So if you're using that solder alloy, you have nothing to worry about, but you can go in the parameters and make changes so that it matches up to what you're currently using. So it's important to know what solder alloy it is that you're using. You can do it all through the station. What I'm about to show you is using the Hakko Control Software. You can do it a whole lot easier, and that's what I'm about to show you right now. So let's go ahead and take a look through at the Hakko Control Software, shall we? So this is what the control software looks like. Right? It says Hakko Control Software FX-305 up top. And this is the main screen that you get, and there's different pieces of information that you can see. For example, ID, I have an ID number set in place. That's actually the serial number for my FX-305 that I have here. Right? You can also put in words or different identifiers if you want. That's totally up to you. Over here you have the status. Status is running. If I stop it, then it'll say stop, right? If I bring it back to running, then it says standby because the pot is trying to get to set temperature, and once it does, it changes to running. Now here I have my current setting I'm using preset 3, set to 700 degrees Fahrenheit. And here is my current offset value. I have a offset value entered of 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Here on your main display here, that's my current heater sensor temperature readout. It's reading 700 degrees Fahrenheit, matches what you see on the display of the station, right? Then here, life timer set to 0, solder type, SN. SN is for tin. So I'll go over these in a minute here. Just bear with me a little bit. And down here below, icons, these are your preset numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and preset temperatures down underneath each individual preset number. So preset 3 is set to 700, preset 5 is set to 950, for example, right? Pretty self-explanatory, easy to understand. And down here we have 4 different icons. Starting off with the one on the left, it says temp change. What do you think it does when I click it? You're able to change your temperature. So you can change the temperature by actually entering in a number. You can also scroll and enter a number, right? And you can see that the minimum is 120, maximum is 990, because I'm using a 50 by 50 crucible. When you switch out the crucibles to a larger size crucible and enter that information into the software, then that maximum allowable temperature will change, right? Now the next icon, this is offset change. So here, like I talked about earlier, you can manually enter an offset number. You can also scroll and enter an offset number, or you can use the probe and the tip thermometer, the FG100B, for example, that I had, that I was showing you guys earlier, and send that information wirelessly and do the offset that way. All right. Now here are the next couple of features using the control software that I think will be really useful in a production environment. One is this parameter setting. Click that, open that up. What you get now is the parameter settings. So for every one of our stations, we have system parameters where you can go in and change, and you have access to different things. Like for example, in the case of the solder pot, I was telling you about the pre-programmed temperature profiles depending on the solder alloy type that you use. Well, you can do that, like I said, you can do that through the station only, but by using the control software, it makes it that much more easier. It's all on one page, so you guys can see it all on one page. So solder type, click that. Here, now you have access to, you can select tin lead, for example. You can select tin silver copper. That's the default setting, tin silver copper. You can select tin copper, you can select tin, or tin bismuth. Now, these are the 5 commonly used types of solder alloys in our industry. That's why we have those 5 set within the solder pot. And again, depending on the solder alloy type that you use, the station will heat up and ramp up the heaters and the crucibles depending on the solder alloy type that you use, right? In my case, like I said, I'm using a SN995, so that's why I have the SN input here. And my crucible size, I'm not using the 75, I'm using the 50, so that's what I have input there as well. Right here on the next section is the live timer menu. Live timer menu I have set to on for 200 hours. Ready alarm, I have it set to on. Ready alarm is when it's reached your set temperature. If you want it to beep or not, you can turn that buzzer alarm on or off. That's what this is. The live timer menu, keep that on and say you have 200 hours. How you can use the live timer menu, you can use that to maybe use it as a reminder for when you want to change the solder that's within your crucible. Maybe it's time to change the solder out. Then you can use that live timer menu to alert you, to let you know, hey, 200 hours has come by, now it's about the time you want to dump out the solder that's in the crucible and replace it with a new one. You could use the timer that way. You can also use the timer to remind you of when you need to rotate the crucibles 90 degrees. That's part of the maintenance procedures on our solder pots because of the way the heaters are making contact with the side walls of the crucible. So I'll take the crucible here. So remember, the heaters are making contact just like that. So every so often, whenever you take the crucible out of the FX-305, you want to make sure you rotate them 90 degrees so that the heaters are hitting the walls evenly. Here, here, and then here. Just keep rotating them. It's like rotating the tires on your car. The front and back tires on your car, it's the same thing. You want to make sure you're rotating the crucible every so often so that you make sure, again, you're wearing out the walls of the crucible evenly. That's how you'll get the most life out of your crucibles. All right. Going back to the control software, sorry, I got a little bit sidetracked there, but down here is your password lockout menu. If you want to prevent access to operators from certain things, you can do that by turning that partial or fully locked, and then you can do lock, unlock for each of the offset presets or temperature selections. Down here below is the ID input. You can put, again, this is a serial number that I have put in here, but you can put anything that you want. For example, I can go ahead and take that serial number out and I can put like, I don't know, I can put in Kenta's demo unit if I wanted to within the ID. That's totally up to you. Now over here on the right-hand side of the parameter setting page, this is where you have your set temperatures. Right now it's set to 700. You have your offset temperature right now set to 41. You can go ahead and change all that. Down in the middle section is your preset 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Here are your preset temperatures for preset 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Over here is where you can change your preset temperatures for preset 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. And then down here, this last section is preset turning on or off preset 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So, for example, I could go in and click those two off, turn preset 4 and 5 off, right? And say I wanted to turn off the live timer, I wanted to turn off the ready alarm, I can do that. And then once you're done making changes on this page and you want to dump that information onto the solder FX-305, you just hit confirm. And then now the station has read all that information, okay? If I want to bring back an old save parameter, because that's what you can do, by using the save button, you can actually save a parameter that you've saved in the past, right? By naming, you can name it here and then just click save, right? And what you can also do is you can go back and load. So you see that I have a few parameters already saved up. So you can go into load, hit load, click the one that you want, open it up. And then you can see that once I loaded it, the live timer menu is back on, ready alarm is back on. And from here, you just hit confirm. And now I've loaded that information back onto my FX-305, right? Now, when is this feature useful? This feature becomes useful for people who have multiple, who use multiple solder pots on your production floor. Not so much, maybe not so much useful for anyone that uses just one single solder pot. But say you have, I don't know, 15, 20 solder pots lined up within your facility, and you set up one FX-305 and you want to duplicate those settings on all of your other solder pots. Then what you can do that rather quickly and simply or easily by using the control software, by saving a specific parameter, whatever it is that you want, you created, you can save it, dump it into one FX-305, unplug it, connect it to the next one, load it, confirm it, and boom, 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 boom. You can repeat that process for however many solder pots that you have all lined up within your facility. You don't have to go in there to the station, go into the system parameters, start selecting parameter 26, select the solder type, go into parameter 27 and select the crucible type, select the preset temperatures. You can do that, right? All through the station. It just takes a little bit of time, you know, especially if you have 15, 20 solder pots all throughout your facility. But now, if you use the control software, use the laptop, connect it to your solder pot, you can do that. Boom, 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 boom. Just makes that process a whole lot easier. So I do recommend using the Hakko Control Software. Okay, so that's what those parameter settings were about. Now, the next portion. I think this is also a very useful feature for anyone using solder pots within the facility. And that's this auto cal feature. Because I believe, or I know, for most of our customers who use solder pots within the facility, for the most part, those people are measuring and verifying the temperatures within the pot, right? They're taking measurements, maybe it's at the beginning of the day, and maybe it's at the end of the day, maybe it's twice a day, maybe it's 3 times a day, whatever the case may be. They're taking measurements to verify the station and the measured temperature, right? And they're probably maybe writing that information down on a sheet of paper and keeping that sheet of paper in a folder for record keeping purposes. Or maybe some people are writing it down on a piece of paper and then from there having to transfer that information from paper onto their computer. Well, by using this auto cal feature on the Hakko Control Software, you can do that all in one, right? And that's what I'm gonna show you right now. Okay, so let's go back to the control software. I'm gonna click this auto cal button, sorry. And then this window pops up. It says set conditions is required to start. So first thing I want to do is click this condition setting icon and set my conditions. This is where you set your, call them tolerances, or the window of tolerance. And that window is totally up to you. Right now I have it set to plus or minus 25F, as you can see here, right? You have the capability to go up to plus or minus 45. But for me, I just have it set to plus or minus 25, right? And again, that's totally up to you. Some people might go plus or minus 15. Some people might want to do plus or minus 30. That all depends on your guidelines. Here is number of retries. You can select 1, 2, or 3. 0, 1, 2, or 3, right? And then after you've set your conditions, you just hit confirm. Now you're ready to start the measurement. Using the temperature probe and your FG100B, you click start, and it gives you a little time. And then it says, after measuring the temperature, send it by infrared transmission. So that's what I'm gonna do. And here is where I'll introduce the other the other, what do you call it? The accessory for the not the FX-305, and it's this fixture that you can attach the temperature probe, and the fixture will attach to the FX-305 itself, right? And it's a nice fixture to use so that you're getting a consistent measurement every time, and you're not having to hold the probe with your hand every single time. So you place the probe in the fixture like I have here, right? And then I'm going to attach the probe and the fixture to the side of the FX-305, and then you just want to try to place the probe in the center of the crucible, and then you can, you know, move this up or down. Hits there, just tighten that down, and that way it's secure. And now I can turn my FG100B on and take a measurement, right? So when you're taking a measurement, whether it's using the probe or whether it's using, whether you're measuring soldering iron tips, you want to make sure you either use the max hold feature or the auto feature. I use the auto feature because that auto feature, you can see maybe, there you go. Once that auto stops flashing, that gives you the stabilized temperature measurement. So 704 versus 700 here, okay? Measure temperature, set temperature, and sensor temperature. So going back to the control software, what does it say? It says after measuring the temperature, send it by infrared transmission. Right, so going back to the control software and the display, there we go. Right, I'm going to send this measure temperature information to the station. Boom. It says result pass. All right. So that's because my measure temperature was within the plus or minus 25 F that I originally set in my condition setting menu, right? So I'm going to stop the testing, right? And then this icon here, this is like my history icon. So if I click that, here is where you can see your results. Now you can search your results by ID type. If you have different stations that you measured, you can narrow it down by the date. You can narrow it down by the pot size, if you wish, by the solder type. And then once you can do that, and then just click search. And then here are all my past results for everything that I've done. So today is the 18th, it's about 2:14, so this is the one. I highlight it, and it gives you information such as the ID, the date, the time, whether it passed or not, the set temperature, my tolerance that I input, my measured temperature, my offset value that I have in the station, solder type, pot size, and the life timer, right? So it gives you all that information. It's recording that information. Another way it'll also record is if I close this out, minimize this, go in my folder, go into the control software, Hakko Control Software, and look under Auto Cal Results. Here it is, the FX-305 Cal. Open that up, and here it is. So today's date, 5/18/214. This is the latest one that I just showed you guys. So here's the ID again. Here's the date and time, whether it passed or not, the set temperature, the tolerances, my measured temperature, all that good stuff. The solder type, pot size, life timer. All this information gets recorded on your computer, just like this, as a CSV file. And from here, you can choose to just save it for record keeping purposes, or you can do whatever you want with it actually. But a lot of people will keep it for record keeping purposes. So this again is a good, very nice tool for anyone using solder pots, because I know there's people out there that are measuring the solder pot temperatures, writing it down on a piece of paper and keeping track of it, keeping it in a folder for record keeping purposes. Using our Hakko Control Software connected to the station itself, you can have all that information all on your computer, right? Really easy. Now, I know there may be some of you out there that said, oh, we don't need that kind of a feature for our solder pot. And you know, that may be true, but I'll just say more and more of our customers are having this sort of requirement, because our customers are being required from their customers that there needs to be some sort of record tracking, data tracking capabilities built into the tools. So, you know, just know our newer generation of stations, whether it be the FX-305, the FX-805, the FX-971, or the soon-to-be released FX-972. All of the newer generation stations from Hakko, you can use it, connect it to the Hakko Control Software, so they have that capability already built in. The software, like I said, it's no extra cost associated with it. It comes with the station already built in, all right? But again, you know, the main thing is the main thing. And what do I mean by that? The FX-305, it's a high performance solder pot. Like I showed you guys at the very beginning, to melt 2 pounds of solder that was within this 50 by 50 crucible, it took, you know, what was it, 10 minutes, if that? You tell me, can your solder pot melt 2 pounds of solder set to what, 700 degrees Fahrenheit in about 10 minutes? You tell me if it can do that, right? You want to cut that time in half? Well, here is a tool that can help cut that time in half. That new digital solder pot from Hakko. It's the FX-305. Has a whole bunch of, not only does it heat up fast, heaters are more durable, the heaters are more accessible, right? When you do need to perform the maintenance, we have built-in features like the preset feature, the pre-programmed solder alloy temperature profiles. We have the Hakko Control Software that you can track and save temperature data, right? And we have accessories to help you measure and verify pot temperature. So a lot of stuff that you can get with the FX-305, right? Plus, it's safe too. We have built-in safety features like I talked about, okay? A lot of stuff that I covered. I hope I was able to show everyone just how good, just how fast our FX-305 works, right? Some of the features and benefits that you get on the FX-305, it's a really, really nice solder pot to have within your production facility. So I wanted to show that to everyone for today's episode of Eye on Hakko. A quick shout out to my peoples out in Tennessee. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for, you know, letting me know you appreciate the videos while I visited you. So I hope to see you guys out there in Tennessee soon again. But again, thank you everyone for watching. I'll try to get another one of these webinars out. Maybe next time will be June or July, that time frame, but I'll try to get another one out. In the meantime, if you have any other questions, whether it be about the FX-305, maybe it's about a different product that you want to see me cover on an Eye on Hakko webinar, you can reach out to us, support@HakkoUSA.com, or you can give us a call at 1-800-88-HAKKO. All right. Again, I appreciate everyone watching today, and we'll see you next time. And remember, keep your eye on Hakko. Thank you.